The greatest mistake people make is believing a worn hat can never hide an extraordinary future. Before the first rays of sunlight reached the rolling hills outside Pine Creek, pickup trucks, livestock trailers, and ranch hands were already filling the fairgrounds for the state's largest cattle exhibition. Every year, the event attracted successful ranch owners, wealthy investors, and agricultural executives hoping to secure profitable partnerships. Expensive trucks lined the entrance, polished boots stepped confidently across the gravel, and conversations about million-dollar contracts echoed through the cool morning air. Then, an aging pickup truck, faded by years of dust and hard work, slowly approached the main gate pulling a modest cattle trailer. Behind the wheel sat Marcus Bennett, dressed in worn denim jeans, scuffed leather boots, a weathered flannel shirt, and an old cowboy hat that had clearly seen better days. As he parked beside the livestock pens, he climbed out and calmly checked each head of cattle before opening the trailer gate. Every movement reflected patience and care. His animals looked healthy, calm, and exceptionally well cared for, yet almost nobody noticed them. Their attention focused instead on Marcus's simple appearance. A security volunteer glanced toward the old truck before shaking his head. "General exhibitors unload around the back," he said, without even checking the registration tag. Marcus answered with a polite smile. "Thank you. I appreciate your help." As he slowly guided the cattle toward the assigned pen, several ranch owners standing nearby exchanged amused looks. One man laughed quietly. "Looks like somebody drove straight out of another century." Another smiled. "He probably hopes one good cow will change his life." Their comments spread through the small crowd, followed by restrained laughter. Marcus showed no sign of offense. He simply continued leading his cattle with the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing to prove. Inside the registration building, people stepped ahead in line without acknowledging him. A few assumed he worked for another ranch. Others barely looked in his direction. Only one person noticed what everyone else ignored. Olivia Brooks, the event coordinator, looked up from her desk and realized Marcus had been waiting patiently while others repeatedly passed in front of him. She immediately walked over with a friendly smile. "Sir, I believe you were here first. Let me help you." Marcus looked genuinely surprised. "Thank you. Most people have been too busy to notice." Olivia handed him his exhibitor badge. "Everyone deserves the same respect, no matter what they drive or what they wear." Marcus accepted the badge with quiet gratitude. That is not something people say very often anymore. Before Olivia could answer, Derek Collins entered the building surrounded by local business owners eager to greet him. Spotting Marcus beside the counter, Derek smirked confidently. "I hope they remembered to park the cattle far enough away from the real investors." A few people chuckled as Marcus calmly stepped aside without responding. Olivia watched the exchange with disappointment, while Marcus simply thanked her once again and walked toward the livestock barns. Neither Derek nor anyone else realized that the quiet cattle herder they had dismissed within minutes of meeting him had not come to Pine Creek searching for opportunity. He had come searching for something far more valuable, and before the week ended, the entire town would discover just how wrong their first impressions had been. Marcus spent the next several hours away from the crowds, moving quietly among his cattle, with the same steady patience that had guided him since sunrise. While many exhibitors polished banners or rehearsed sales pitches for potential investors, he focused on brushing each animal, replacing fresh hay, and making certain every water trough remained full. To Marcus, success had never begun inside a boardroom. It began with doing ordinary things extraordinarily well. A young ranch hand from another county struggled to secure the latch on a heavy livestock gate after one of his calves wandered toward the wrong pen. Several nearby exhibitors noticed, but continued their conversations without offering assistance. Marcus calmly walked over, guided the calf back inside, and adjusted the latch until it closed securely. "Thank you," the young man said with relief. "I was afraid I was holding everyone up." Marcus smiled kindly. Everyone needs a helping hand once in a while. The ranch hand reached into his pocket and offered him a few dollars for his trouble, but Marcus gently shook his head. "Keep it. Maybe one day you can help someone else instead." The young man nodded gratefully before returning to his animals. From across the aisle, Olivia had quietly witnessed the entire exchange while delivering paperwork to another exhibitor. She realized Marcus never looked around to see whether anyone was watching before doing something kind. His actions seemed completely natural. As lunchtime approached, Olivia noticed Marcus sitting alone beside the cattle pens with nothing more than a bottle of water after finishing another round of chores. Carrying 2 freshly made sandwiches from the food stand, she walked over with an easy smile. "I thought you might appreciate some company," she said. Marcus looked pleasantly surprised. "You have already done more than enough for me today." Olivia handed him one of the sandwiches anyway. Kindness is easier when someone accepts it. They shared a quiet meal while watching families wander through the fairgrounds. Children laughed as they admired the livestock, and the sound of country music drifted through the warm afternoon air. Olivia asked Marcus how long he had worked with cattle. He paused for a moment before answering. "Long enough to learn that people and animals have something in common. They both respond better when they are treated with patience instead of pride." Olivia smiled at the unexpected wisdom behind such a simple answer. Before she could ask another question, Derek Collins walked past with several prominent ranch owners. Seeing Marcus and Olivia talking together, Derek smirked confidently. "Careful, Olivia. You might end up believing that old truck outside belongs in the executive parking lot." A few people laughed politely, expecting Marcus to react. Instead, he simply stood, thanked Olivia for lunch, and wished Derek a successful exhibition with complete sincerity. Derek looked strangely disappointed that his remark had failed to provoke even the smallest sign of anger. As Marcus returned to his cattle, Olivia watched him with growing curiosity. The quiet rancher carried himself with a calm confidence that did not match the simple life everyone assumed he lived, and somewhere beyond the busy fairgrounds, a carefully planned visit had already begun that would soon test every first impression made inside Pine Creek. As the afternoon continued, the exhibition grounds grew even busier as more visitors arrived from neighboring counties. Families admired prize-winning cattle, local musicians performed near the food vendors, and investors moved from one livestock pen to another, searching for promising opportunities. Marcus remained focused on his animals, speaking softly as he checked each saddle, feed container, and water trough. He never hurried. Every task received the same careful attention, no matter how small it seemed. While others measured success by how many people noticed them, Marcus believed real character was revealed when nobody was paying attention. A gray-haired rancher nearby struggled to lift several heavy bags of feed from the bed of his truck. 2 younger exhibitors glanced in his direction before continuing their conversation about upcoming auctions. Without hesitation, Marcus walked over and quietly carried the bags one by one into the storage shed. "You did not have to do all that," the older rancher said gratefully. Marcus smiled. "Someday, I may need someone to help me too." The rancher reached for his wallet, but Marcus politely declined. "Please keep your money. Kindness becomes more valuable when it is passed along." The older man nodded with genuine respect, wondering why someone with so little seemed completely unconcerned about being rewarded. A short time later, Olivia was delivering updated schedules throughout the fairgrounds when she noticed a small group of children standing outside Marcus's cattle pen. They were fascinated by one gentle brown steer, but seemed too nervous to approach. Marcus knelt beside them and patiently explained how to remain calm around livestock. He showed them how to extend an open hand and speak softly so the animal would feel comfortable. Soon the children were smiling with excitement as the steer calmly accepted their attention. Parents thanked Marcus before leading their children toward the next exhibit, leaving Olivia quietly watching from a distance. She had met successful ranch owners who enjoyed talking about themselves, but Marcus seemed happiest helping complete strangers. As she walked over, she asked, "Where did you learn to be so patient?" Marcus looked toward the cattle before answering. "Life teaches patience when you are willing to listen instead of rushing ahead." His answer sounded simple, yet it carried a quiet confidence that stayed with Olivia. Before she could continue the conversation, a sleek black luxury sport utility vehicle slowly entered the restricted service entrance near the exhibition office. Several people noticed the expensive vehicle and immediately wondered who had arrived. A professionally dressed man stepped out holding a leather portfolio and carefully surveyed the grounds. His eyes briefly settled on Marcus before he checked his watch and calmly returned to the vehicle without speaking to anyone. The vehicle drove away only moments later, leaving behind a trail of curiosity. Derek laughed when someone suggested the visitor might have been searching for an important investor. Whoever they wanted, it certainly was not the cattle herder, he joked confidently. Marcus simply returned to brushing one of his steers, showing no interest in the mysterious arrival. Olivia, however, could not ignore the strange feeling that the visitor had come for a very specific reason. And somehow, that reason seemed quietly connected to the humble man everyone else continued to overlook. As evening approached, the fairgrounds gradually transformed from busy livestock barns into an elegant gathering place for ranch owners, agricultural executives, and community leaders. Strings of warm lights stretched across the reception pavilion, while long wooden tables were decorated with fresh flowers and polished silverware. The annual networking dinner was considered the most important social event of the exhibition because many future partnerships were quietly decided over simple conversations rather than formal meetings. Every registered exhibitor had received an invitation, including Marcus. Wearing the same clean but weathered flannel shirt, faded jeans, and worn cowboy boots, Marcus calmly walked toward the entrance, with his invitation folded neatly inside his pocket. Before he reached the reception desk, an event attendant looked him over and hesitated. "Sir, this reception is reserved for invited guests and business representatives." Marcus politely handed over his invitation without saying another word. The attendant studied the card, uncertain how to respond. At that moment, Derek Collins approached with several influential ranch owners, who immediately greeted him with broad smiles and firm handshakes. Derek noticed Marcus standing quietly beside the entrance and laughed. "Surely there has been some confusion. I do not remember the dinner, including entertainment from the cattle pens." A few nearby guests smiled politely, unwilling to disagree with one of the county's wealthiest businessmen. Marcus remained completely calm. "If there has been a mistake, I am happy to leave." Before the attendant could answer, Olivia stepped outside carrying a seating chart. She recognized Marcus immediately. "There is no mistake," she said confidently. "His name is on the official guest list." The attendant checked the list again and nodded. "She is correct. Please come inside, sir." Derek forced a polite smile, although disappointment briefly crossed his face. Marcus simply thanked both of them and entered without the slightest trace of resentment. Throughout dinner, he chose a quiet seat near the back of the room, while conversations around him centered on expanding ranches, expensive breeding programs, and investment opportunities worth millions of dollars. When guests introduced themselves, Marcus answered every question honestly, but never spoke about money. Instead, he asked about families, local traditions, and how recent weather had affected cattle production. Olivia noticed something unusual. The wealthiest people in the room constantly tried to impress one another, yet Marcus seemed far more interested in listening than speaking. During the meal, an elderly ranch owner accidentally dropped a stack of presentation folders while walking toward the stage. Several guests glanced over before returning to their conversations. Marcus quietly stood, gathered every folder, and carried them to the gentleman's table without expecting recognition. The grateful rancher thanked him warmly. Olivia watched the simple gesture with growing admiration. Derek noticed it as well, but dismissed it with another sarcastic smile. "Some people are simply born to serve," he whispered to the guests beside him. None of them realized that outside the pavilion, another black luxury vehicle had quietly entered the private parking area. A professionally dressed driver stepped out, checked his phone, and respectfully waited beside the rear passenger door without opening it. Whoever had just arrived was clearly someone important, and before the evening ended, every person inside the reception hall would discover that the most powerful guest had been sitting among them all along. As the dinner continued, conversations around the pavilion became more animated. Business owners exchanged cards. Local officials discussed future development plans, and ranchers proudly described the size of their operations. Marcus remained quietly seated near the end of the table, listening far more than speaking. Whenever someone asked him about his cattle, he answered with simple honesty. He never exaggerated his experience or tried to impress anyone. Olivia noticed that despite being ignored by many of the guests, Marcus never seemed uncomfortable. Instead, he appeared to be carefully observing every conversation taking place around him. Outside, the black luxury vehicle remained parked beneath the soft glow of the pavilion lights. The driver occasionally checked his watch while speaking briefly into a wireless earpiece before returning to his position beside the vehicle. Several guests noticed the expensive automobile through the windows and quietly wondered which important executive had arrived. Derek confidently assumed the visitor must be connected to one of the large investment firms expected to announce a regional expansion later that week. He immediately excused himself from his table and stepped outside, hoping to introduce himself before anyone else had the chance. To his surprise, the driver politely greeted him, but explained that the passenger was not available for meetings. Derek forced a smile and walked back inside, slightly frustrated that even he had been denied access. Meanwhile, Marcus's phone vibrated quietly inside the pocket of his flannel shirt. He glanced at the screen for only a moment before placing the phone back without answering. Olivia happened to notice. "That must be an important call," she said gently. Marcus smiled. "It can wait. Good conversations should never be interrupted, unless they truly have to be." Olivia found his answer refreshing. Throughout the evening, she had watched countless business leaders stop conversations the instant their phones rang. Yet Marcus seemed completely content to remain present with the people around him. A few minutes later, the master of ceremonies stepped onto the small stage and welcomed everyone to the annual dinner. He thanked local ranchers for supporting the agricultural community before making an unexpected announcement. "Tomorrow morning," he said, "representatives from the Harrison Rural Development Foundation will begin evaluating Pine Creek for a historic investment that could transform agriculture across this entire region." Excited whispers immediately spread across the room. The foundation had earned a national reputation for funding innovative livestock programs and modern ranching facilities. Every ranch owner suddenly became eager to make the best possible impression. Derek smiled confidently, already imagining himself leading the project. Marcus remained calm, his expression unchanged. Olivia noticed the difference immediately. Instead of looking excited like everyone else, Marcus simply listened with quiet interest, almost as though the announcement confirmed something he had expected all along. As the evening came to an end, guests slowly left the pavilion while discussing strategies for impressing the foundation representatives. Marcus thanked Olivia for her kindness before walking back toward the livestock barns beneath the clear night sky. From a distance, the driver of the black luxury vehicle watched Marcus leave, respectfully nodded to himself, and quietly drove away without speaking to anyone, leaving behind one more mystery that nobody in Pine Creek could possibly explain. The following morning arrived with clear blue skies stretching across Pine Creek as anticipation spread throughout the exhibition grounds. Overnight, word of the Harrison Rural Development Foundation had reached nearly every ranch owner attending the event. Everyone believed the foundation's representatives would soon begin evaluating businesses capable of leading a project worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Expensive trucks appeared even earlier than the day before. New display banners decorated livestock pens, polished presentations rested inside briefcases, and conversations centered almost entirely on attracting the foundation's attention. Marcus arrived before sunrise, exactly as he had the previous morning. He quietly fed his cattle, replaced fresh bedding, inspected every fence, and made certain each animal remained comfortable. No photographers followed him. No audience applauded his work. He simply believed responsibility should never depend upon who happened to be watching. Olivia walked through the barns carrying updated event schedules when she noticed Marcus tightening a loose section of fencing with a simple wrench. "You are already working again," she said with a smile. Marcus looked up briefly. "The cattle do not know it is a special day." "They still depend on me." Olivia laughed softly. "You always seem calm no matter what is happening around you." Marcus returned the wrench to his toolbox. People make better decisions when they are not chasing attention. Before Olivia could respond, 3 black sport utility vehicles slowly entered the restricted service entrance beside the administration building. Unlike the mysterious vehicles from the previous day, these displayed discreet identification belonging to the Harrison Rural Development Foundation. Event staff hurried toward the parking area, while local officials quickly straightened their jackets and prepared to greet the visitors. Derek immediately gathered several influential ranch owners and confidently walked toward the administration office, convinced this was the opportunity he had been waiting for. Marcus remained exactly where he was, quietly brushing one of his steers. Olivia looked at him with growing curiosity. "Everyone else is trying to meet the foundation representatives. Why are you staying here?" Marcus smiled gently. "The right opportunities usually find the people who are busy doing the right work." His answer lingered in Olivia's mind. It sounded less like the opinion of a struggling cattle herder and more like advice from someone who understood success from a much deeper perspective. Just then, one of the foundation executives walked across the livestock area carrying a leather portfolio. As he passed Marcus's cattle pen, he slowed for only a brief moment, offered Marcus a respectful nod, and quietly continued walking without saying a word. The exchange lasted no more than 2 seconds, yet Olivia noticed it immediately. Marcus calmly nodded in return before continuing his work as though nothing unusual had happened. Derek, occupied with introducing himself to foundation officials near the administration building, never saw the silent exchange. Throughout the rest of the morning, more small details began to stand out. Marcus received another phone call, but chose not to answer. A professionally dressed man approached the cattle barns, appeared ready to speak with Marcus, then quietly turned away after noticing several visitors nearby. None of it made sense to Olivia anymore. The humble rancher everyone dismissed seemed strangely familiar to people connected with the powerful foundation, and deep inside, she began to realize that the quiet truth hidden behind Marcus's ordinary appearance could not remain a secret for much longer. By early afternoon, the largest conference hall at the exhibition grounds was completely filled. Ranch owners, investors, local officials, journalists, and exhibitors gathered shoulder to shoulder after receiving an announcement that the Harrison Rural Development Foundation was ready to reveal the community partner chosen to lead its historic agricultural initiative. Excitement filled every corner of the room because the project promised hundreds of millions of dollars in long-term investments, modern ranching facilities, educational programs, and thousands of new opportunities for farming families throughout the region. Derek confidently stood near the front, beside several influential business leaders, convinced his years of networking had secured his position. Olivia remained near the side entrance, helping late arrivals find available seats, although her attention kept drifting toward the back of the room, where Marcus quietly entered, wearing the same weathered flannel shirt, faded jeans, and worn cowboy boots he had worn since the first day. Several guests noticed him and exchanged amused smiles. One businessman quietly whispered, "He probably came to watch successful people celebrate." Marcus ignored every comment and calmly took an empty seat near the back wall. Moments later, the lights dimmed as several distinguished foundation executives stepped onto the stage alongside attorneys, board members, and community representatives. Behind them, a large screen displayed the Harrison Rural Development Foundation emblem. The executive director welcomed everyone before explaining that the organization had spent months evaluating communities across the country. Financial reports had been reviewed, business proposals examined, and facilities inspected, but those factors alone had never determined the final decision. "We also observed something much more important," the director said. "We quietly evaluated integrity, humility, compassion, and the way people treated others when they believed nobody important was watching." A thoughtful silence settled across the audience. Derek smiled confidently, believing those words still described him. The director paused before continuing. "Our evaluation included anonymous visits throughout this exhibition, allowing us to observe authentic behavior rather than prepared presentations." Curious whispers spread through the hall. Olivia felt her heart beating faster as she remembered the mysterious visitors and unexplained encounters surrounding Marcus. Then the director looked toward the back of the room. "There's one individual we would now like to invite onto the stage. Mr. Marcus Bennett, would you please join us?" The room instantly became silent. Hundreds of heads slowly turned toward Marcus. Derek stared in complete disbelief as Marcus calmly stood, adjusted his old cowboy hat, and walked confidently toward the stage without the slightest sign of surprise. As soon as he reached the platform, every foundation executive greeted him with genuine respect. One senior board member warmly extended his hand and said, "Welcome, Mr. Bennett. We have been waiting for you." Gasps echoed throughout the conference hall. Olivia could hardly believe what she was witnessing. The executive director smiled before facing the audience once again. "Many of you believed Mr. Bennett was simply a humble cattle herder. In reality, he is the founder and chief executive officer of Bennett Agricultural Enterprises, one of the largest privately owned agricultural corporations in the United States, and the principal benefactor of our foundation. He chose to conceal his identity because he wanted to discover who valued character before wealth. In a single unforgettable moment, every assumption made during the previous days collapsed beneath the weight of the truth." For several long moments, complete silence filled the conference hall. The laughter that had echoed through the exhibition grounds only hours earlier had disappeared, replaced by expressions of disbelief and quiet reflection. Derek remained frozen near the front row, unable to take his eyes off Marcus. Every sarcastic comment, every dismissive glance, and every careless assumption suddenly returned to his memory with painful clarity. Olivia stood beside the aisle, still trying to understand how the humble cattle herder she had met only days before was now being welcomed by some of the most respected leaders in American agriculture. Marcus accepted the warm greetings from the foundation executives before stepping toward the podium. His appearance had not changed. He still wore the same worn cowboy hat, weathered flannel shirt, faded jeans, and well-used boots. The only thing that had changed was what everyone now knew about him. Looking across the audience, Marcus smiled gently before speaking. "Thank you for welcoming me to your community. During the past several days, I learned far more than any report or presentation could have taught me. I met hard-working families, dedicated ranchers, and people who truly care about the future of agriculture. I also learned how quickly appearances can shape the way we treat one another. His calm voice carried through the silent room. Success is never measured by the truck someone drives or the clothes they wear. Character is revealed by how we treat people before we know what they can offer us. Many heads slowly lowered as his words settled across the audience. Marcus continued, "That is exactly why I chose to visit Pine Creek without revealing my identity. Wealth can open doors, but it cannot reveal honest hearts." When he finished speaking, the audience rose to its feet in a long standing ovation. Yet Marcus seemed far more interested in the people than in the applause. As the presentation concluded, business owners quickly surrounded him with congratulations, business cards, and requests for private meetings. The same people who had ignored him now eagerly asked for opportunities to work beside him. Marcus thanked each person with courtesy, but made no promises. Derek finally stepped forward, his confident smile replaced by sincere regret. "Mr. Bennett," he said quietly, "I judged you without knowing anything about you. I was wrong, and I truly apologize." Marcus looked at him with calm understanding. Every person deserves the chance to grow. The important thing is whether we learn from our mistakes after we recognize them. Derek nodded respectfully, understanding that genuine humility carried far more value than pride. Marcus then walked through the crowd until he reached Olivia. She smiled nervously, still struggling to find the right words. "I cannot believe all of this is real," she admitted softly. Marcus smiled warmly. "You never treated me differently before you knew who I was. That tells me everything I needed to know about your character." Olivia felt deeply moved because she realized the kindness she had shown without expecting anything in return had become the most important decision she had made all week. Around them, conversations continued throughout the conference hall, but Marcus already knew his greatest discovery had never been about selecting a community for investment. It had been finding someone whose heart had remained unchanged even when everyone else judged by appearances alone. After the applause finally faded, Marcus stepped back to the podium one last time. The conference hall became quiet once again, with every person waiting to hear what the Billionaire chief executive officer would say next. He looked across the audience with the same calm expression he had worn while caring for his cattle only hours earlier. "Today was never about proving that I am successful," he began. "It was about discovering who understands that respect should never depend upon wealth, appearance, or influence." His words settled gently over the room. "Our foundation has officially selected Pine Creek for a long-term partnership, but this investment will not belong to one ranch or one business. It will belong to the entire community." The large screen behind him displayed detailed plans for modern training centers, advanced cattle facilities, educational scholarships, veterinary support programs, and new opportunities for family ranches throughout the region. The audience watched with amazement as project after project appeared on the screen. Small ranch owners who had struggled for years would receive resources once available only to the largest operations. Young people interested in agriculture would have access to education and mentoring without leaving their hometown. Marcus smiled as hopeful conversations began spreading through the hall. Then he looked toward Olivia. "Before we conclude, there is one final announcement." She looked surprised as every eye in the room turned toward her. Marcus continued, "During my visit, one person consistently demonstrated kindness without expecting recognition. She treated every guest with equal respect, whether they arrived in an old pickup truck or a luxury vehicle. Character like that cannot be purchased, and it cannot be taught through presentations." Olivia felt tears gathering in her eyes as Marcus invited her onto the stage. "Olivia Brooks, I would be honored if you would accept the position of Community Partnership Director for the Pine Creek Development Initiative. I believe this community deserves someone who leads with compassion before authority." Olivia stood speechless for a moment before quietly answering, "I would be honored to serve." The audience responded with heartfelt applause. Derek also stepped forward once more, extending his hand toward Marcus with genuine humility. "Thank you for teaching all of us a lesson we should have learned years ago." Marcus warmly accepted the handshake. Every new beginning starts with the willingness to grow. Several months later, construction had transformed Pine Creek. Modern cattle facilities stood beside family ranches. Educational centers welcomed aspiring agricultural students, and local businesses flourished as new opportunities reached every corner of the community. Olivia became a trusted leader whose compassion inspired countless families, while Marcus continued visiting the town regularly, often arriving in the same old pickup truck and wearing the same weathered cowboy hat, because he never wanted anyone to forget how easily appearances can deceive. Whenever newcomers asked why one of the nation's most successful agricultural leaders still dressed like an ordinary cattle herder, Marcus simply smiled and answered that true wealth is measured by the lives you improve, not by the image you present. From that day forward, the people of Pine Creek remembered that the greatest opportunities often arrive wearing the simplest clothes, and that genuine kindness always recognizes value long before the world discovers success.